Joining us now to talk about the Fed's rate hike path and the impact of higher rates and inflation, we're going to bring in David Walker. He's former U.S. comptroller. He's also author of America in 2040, Still a Superpower, A Pathway to Success. David, we have spoken with you for many, many years about what the impact might be when interest rates finally rose again and got past this zero interest rate environment, what that would mean in terms of how much of our debt how much we have to pay off our debt, what that does to our budget. Where do things stand right now with the interest rate increases we've seen?
Well, Becky, first, thanks for the opportunity to be back with you. We now have excess inflation, rising interest rates. The Fed has got to combat inflation. It's the one that has the primary responsibility there. One of its major tools is to raise its interest rates. But what that does, it ends up having a ripple effect on what the federal government ends up having to pay to service its debt. The fact of the matter is that the rate increases that have already occurred will result in hundreds of billions of dollars in additional annual interest expense for the federal government. And what do we get for interest? Nothing. And so we have a huge fiscal imbalance. It's become exacerbated because of the Fed's action. But again, the Fed's first and foremost responsibility would be to fight inflation. And frankly, its mission needs to be revised, in my view.
Revised how? You're not opposed to the Fed raising interest rates right now to fight inflation. But what do you think just in terms of how their mission should be focused?
Well, right now they have three missions. Number one, to maintain stable prices. Number two, to promote economic growth. Those make sense, but in that order, because they have the primary responsibility with the first. They can help with the second, but obviously Congress and fiscal policy has something to do with that. The third is unemployment. They should have nothing to do with unemployment. We have twice as many jobs today available as we have people looking for jobs. Unemployment is affected much more by education policy, immigration policy, welfare policy. The Fed has nothing to do with that. So we should get them out of that business. And we also have to recognize that for the Fed to be able to ultimately accomplish this objective, the Congress has to get control of its finances. And the only way we're going to get control of its finances is a constitutional amendment that will stabilize debt to GDP at a reasonable and sustainable level. And that's what HCR 101 in the House and the soon-to-be introduced companion legislation in the Senate are designed to do.
How would it work? Because it sounds like a good idea, but I would worry if there was little flexibility for the Fed in periods of crisis. I mean, we needed the Fed to step in when COVID basically shut down the entire economy.
Well, there needs to have a reasonable degree of flexibility. But one of the things that the Fed did that frankly enabled where we are today, it enabled fiscally irresponsible actions by the Congress, enabled them to follow the modern monetary theory, which is flawed and failed, is they purchased trillions of dollars of treasuries directly, which again served to artificially hold down interest rates because we weren't going to the market to sell these. And now they're going to have to unwind that over time, which is going to result in additional pressures to keep interest rates higher.
All right, let's kind of go through this whole idea of modern monetary theory, because that was kind of my take on it, too. When you saw the revolt in terms of the UK gilts, that was the market saying, OK, no more to modern monetary theory, that you can't spend for forever, that there has to be a time when the bill comes due. And it looked to me like that was what was happening. I mean, it's not different from what a lot of governments have done for quite a while, but that looked like the real moment of pushback.
Well, as you know, Becky, the theory is deficits and debt don't matter as long as you can borrow in your own reserve currency, unless and until you have excess inflation. The problem with that is that A, it's contrary to history, contrary to long-established economic principles, based on a flawed comparison to Japan. And guess what? We have excess inflation. But that theory was promulgated by the progressives. It was followed by the progressives. And it is that, along with our dramatic change in energy policy, are the two primary reasons why we have excess inflation today. Too much spending, and we are no longer energy independent, which has to change.